Hi, Don Regio Dolphins. Welcome back to another installment of the Westing game. Today we are going to be reading chapters 11 and 12. However, before we do that, we're going to review chapters 9 and 10 as we always begin. So, taking a look at what we did yesterday, we had chapters 9 and 10 vocabulary words were hors d'oeuvre and humiliate. An hors d'oeuvre is a noun, and it's a small bit of appetizing food, also known as an appetizer. Anytime you have parties, oftentimes instead of serving a full course meal, you would serve an appetizer or an hors d'oeuvre. The second word is humiliate. Humiliate is a verb, and it's to cause a person a loss of pride, self-respect, or dignity, to mortify or embarrass. And we think of Grace Wexler and how she humiliates her daughter Angela when she arrives at the party in the matching outfit as Sidel Pulaski. Her mother humiliates her in front of everybody and then makes her leave to go change clothes. The second part of the activity that we were going to do was create character cards. If you remember, I said that you could do character cards on binder paper, divided into fourths, cut into fourths. You could use index cards. I used index cards. You wanted to create, though, a character card where the front part of the card was one partner and the other side was for the second partner. So then they were divided into the 8 teams that are trying to solve the whodunit. Here were some of the big clues or the big pieces of information that you should have highlighted on your character cards. If you need to pause and write this down on those character cards now, please do so. Group 3, Christos. I think it's important to mention that he's an invalid and is in a wheelchair. That's important because as we're trying to tick off who we think could have done it or committed the murder, that's an important detail. Number 4, Alexander. The reason why I'm having you write down also known as Sandy is because we know that he's already not going by his actual birth name, which could lead us to think that he may be pretending to be somebody he's not. Number 5, this is partner group 5, James Who. James Who has a lawsuit against Sam Westing for stealing his disposable paper diaper idea. I would say right now, James Who would be a prime suspect because he has motive. He's angry and he's in a lawsuit with Sam Westing. And then last, partner group 8, Sidel. Sidel has a limp and she is currently on crutches. The reason why this is an important detail is if we remember Christos or Chris noticed somebody walking onto the Westing estate who had a limp. And in Chris's mind, that person could have been the murderer because the dead body was found shortly thereafter. We're working on chapters 11 and 12. Today's vocabulary words are implication and paraphernalia. And we're going to come back to the second section once we're done reading. I think it's really important that right now you just write down the vocabulary words. Okay, let's read. Chapter 11, The Meeting. A pale sun rose on the third snowbound morning. Lake Michigan lay calm, violet, now blue, but the tenants of Sunset Towers on waking turned to a different view. Lured by the Westing house, they stood at their side windows, scoffing at the danger daring to dream. Should they or shouldn't they share their clues? Well, they go to the meeting in the coffee shop just to see what the others intended to do. Waiting in her closet of a room, Turtle stared at the white-weighted branches of the maple on the hill. A twig snapped in silence. A flurry speckled the crusted snow. Sometimes when her mother was too busy to do her hair, she sent Angela in, but today no one came. They had forgotten about her. Brush and comb clutched in her fists like weapons, she stormed into apartment 2C. Do you know how to braid hair? Flora Bombeck's pudgy fingers, swift with a needle, were clumsy with a comb, but after several tangled attempts, she ended up with 3 equal strands. My, what thick hair you have! I tried braiding my daughter's hair once, but it was too fine, soft, and wispy like a baby's, even in her teens. That was the last thing Turtle wanted to hear. Was she pretty, your daughter? All mothers think their children are beautiful. Rosalie was an exceptional child, they said, but she was the lovingest person that ever was. My mother doesn't think I'm beautiful. Of course she does. My mother says I look just like a turtle when I was a baby, sticking my head out of the blanket. I still look like a turtle, I guess, but I don't care. Where's your daughter now? Gone. Flora Baumbach cleared the catch in her throat. There, that braid should hold for the rest of the day. By the way, you've never told me your real name. Alice, Turtle replied, swinging her head before the mirror. Not one single hair escaped its tight bind. Mrs. Baumbach would make a good braider if only she'd stop yakking about her exceptional child. Rosalie, what a dumb name. You'd better get to the meeting now. Remember, don't say a word to anyone about anything. Just listen. All right, Alice, I promise. Theo wheeled his brother into the elevator and read the new message on the wall. $25 reward for the return of a gold railroad watch inscribed, to Ezra Ford in appreciation of 30 years service to the Milwaukee Road. J.J. Ford, apartment 4D. Chris said. That's right, Judge Ford. Must be her father's watch. Probably lost it. I don't think it could have been stolen by anyone at the party last night. Chris smiled. His brother had not understood him. Good. This might be an important discovery. Judge Ford's name was the same as her apartment number, Ford, 4D. Theo led the waiting tenants through the kitchen, where Mr. and Mrs. Theodorakis handed out cups of tea and coffee. Sorry, we've run out of cream and lemons. Please help yourself to some homemade pastries. Walking into the coffee shop was like entering a cave. A wall of snow pressed against the plate glass window, sealing the door that once opened to the parking lot. I've got a car buried out there, Grace Wexler said, slipping into a booth opposite her partner. Hope I find it before the snowplows do. If they ever get here, Mr. Hu replied. Good thing this meeting wasn't held in my restaurant. I'd go broke passing out free tea if you call this tea. He held up a tea bag with contempt, then groaned on seeing his sweat-suited son jog in with a sweet roll between his teeth and vault over his hands onto a stool. Where's your daughter, the turtle? Grace Wexler looked around. I don't know, maybe she's helping her father with his bookkeeping. Bookkeeping? Mr. Hu let out a whoop. Grace had no idea what was so funny, but she joined him in loud laughter. Nothing stirred people's envy more than a private joke. Thinking she was being laughed at, Sidel Pulaski dropped her polka dot crutch and spilled her coffee on Angela's tapestry bag before managing a solid perch on the counter stool. Clink, clink. Theo tapped a spoon against a glass for attention. Thank you for coming. When the meeting is over, you are all welcome to stay for a chess tournament. Meanwhile, I'd like to explain why my partner and I, called this meeting. I don't know about your clues, but our clues don't make any sense. The heir stared at him with blank faces. No one nodded. No one even blinked. Now then, if no two sets of clues are alike, as the will says, that could mean that each set of clues is only part of one message. The more clues we put together, the better chance we have of finding the murderer and winning the game. Of course, the inheritance will be divided into equal shares. Sidel Pulaski raised her hand like a schoolgirl. What about the clues that are in the will itself? Yes, we'd appreciate having a copy of the will, Miss Pulaski, Theo replied. Well, equal shares doesn't seem quite fair, since I'm the only one here who thought of taking notes. Sidel turned to the group. One penciled eyebrow arched high over her red sequin spectacles. Her self-congratulatory pose was too much for Mr. Hu. Grunting loudly, he squeezed out of the booth and slapped the shorthand pad on the counter. Thief! The secretary shrieked, nearly toppling off the stool as she grabbed her notebook. Thief! I did not steal your notebook, the indignant Hu explained. I found it on a table in my restaurant this morning. You can believe me or not, I really don't care, because those notes you so selfishly dangled under our noses are completely worthless. My partner knows shorthand, and she says your shorthand is nothing but senseless scrawls, gibberish. Pure gibberish, Grace Wexler added. Those are standard shorthand symbols, all right, but they don't translate into words. Thief, Sidel cried, now accusing Mrs. Wexler. Thief! Larcenist! Felon! Don't, Sidel, Angela said softly, her eyes set on the D she was embroidering. You wouldn't understand, Angela. You don't know what it's like to be... Her voice broke. She paused, then lashed out at her enemies, all of them. Who cares a fig about Sidel Pulaski? Nobody, that's who. I'm no fool, you know. I knew I couldn't trust any one of you. You can't read my shorthand because I wrote in Polish. Polish? When the meeting was again called to order, Mr. Hu suggested they offer Miss Pulaski a slightly larger share of the inheritance in exchange for a transcript of the will in English. However, I repeat, neither my partner nor I stole the notes. And if anyone here suspects us of murder, forget it. We both have airtight alibis. Doug choked on a sweet roll. If it got around to alibis, they'd find out where he was the night of the murder, on the Westinghouse lawn. Mr. Hu went on, and to prove our innocence, my partner and I agreed to share our clues. 1 minute, Mr. Hu, Judge Ford stood. It was time for her to speak before matters got out of hand. Let me remind you, all of you, that a person is innocent until proven guilty. We are free to choose whether or not to share our clues without any implication of guilt. I suggest we postpone any decision until we have given the matter careful thought, and until the time all of the heirs can attend. However, since we are assembled, I have a quick question to ask the group. Perhaps others do too. They all did. Wary of giving away game plans, the heirs decided the questions would be written out, but no names were to be signed. Doug collected the scraps of paper and handed them to Theo. Is anyone here a twin? He read. No one answered. What is Turtle's real name? Doug Hu was planning another nasty sign. Tabitha Ruth, replied Mrs. Wexler, with a bewildered look at Flora Bombeck, who said Alice. Well, which is it? Tabitha Ruth Wexler? I should know. I'm her mother. Doug changed his mind about the sign. He couldn't spell Tabitha Ruth. Theo unfolded the next question. How many here have actually met Sam Westing? Grace Wexler raised her hand, lowered it, raised it halfway, then lowered it again, torn between her claim as Sam Westing's relative and being accused of murder. Mr. Hu, an honest man, held up his hand and kept it up. His was the only one. Judge Ford did not think it necessary to respond to her own question. Theo recognized the sprawling handwriting of the next question. Who got kicked last week? Chris did not receive an answer. The meeting was adjourned due to panic. All right, so I want to bring up a couple points here before we get on to chapter 12. One, why is it that Turtle Wexler called herself Alice when her mom said that her name was Tabitha Ruth? Who is Alice and where did she get that name? Second, I want to note that Theo and Doug have probably the most brilliant idea so far. They believe that if they pool all of the clues together, that will make more sense in trying to figure out who killed Sam Westing and to get the answer to the question. At this point, not everybody is willing to share. Some groups have said that they would share theirs, but it's actually Judge Ford who stops everybody to say that everybody should give it thoughtful consideration. However, questions are posed during this chapter, which is interesting because it comes back to the clue of somebody being a twin, people's real names, and how they are related or know Sam Westing. Okay, moving on, chapter 12. The first bomb. It was so sudden. The ear-splitting bangs, the screams, the confusion. Theo and Doug ran into the kitchen. Mrs. Theodorakis ran out. Her hair, her face, her apron were splattered with dark, dripping red. Blood! Sidel Pulaski cried, clutching her heart. Don't just sit there, Catherine Theodorakis shouted. Somebody call the fire department. Angela hurried to the payphone on the wall and stood there trembling, not knowing whether to call or not. They were snowbound. The fire engines could not reach Sunset Towers. Theo leaned through the kitchen doorway. Everything's okay. There's no fire. Chris, honey, it's all right, Mrs. Theodorakis said, kneeling before the wheelchair. It's all right, Chris. Look, it's just tomato sauce. Tomato sauce? Mrs. Theodorakis was covered with tomato sauce, not blood. The curious heirs now piled into the kitchen, except for Sidel Pulaski, who slumped to the counter. She could have a heart attack and no one would notice. Mr. Hu surveyed the scene, trying to conceal his delight. What a mess, he said. That row of cans must have exploded from the heat of the stove. The entire kitchen was splattered with tomato sauce and soaked in foam from the fire extinguishers. What a mess. George Theodorakis regarded him with suspicion. It was a bomb. Catherine Theodorakis thought so too. There was hissing, then bang, bang, sparks flying all over the kitchen, red sparks, purple sparks. Cans of tomato sauce exploded, Doug Hughes said, defending his father. The others agreed. Mrs. Theodorakis was understandably hysterical. A bomb? Ridiculous. Sam Westing certainly did not appear to have been killed by a bomb. Judge Ford suggested that the accident be reported to the police immediately in order to collect on the insurance. You might as well redecorate the entire kitchen, Grace Wexler, decorator, proposed. It should be functional yet attractive, with lots of copper pots hanging from the ceiling. I don't think there's any real damage, Catherine Theodorakis replied, but we'll have to close for a few days to clean up. Mr. Hu smiled. Angela offered to help. Angela, dear, you have a fitting this afternoon, Grace reminded her, and we have so much to do for the wedding shower on Saturday. In thumped Sidel Pulaski. I'm fine now, just a bit woozy. Goodness, what a nasty turn. Having recovered from the nasty turn, Sidel Pulaski settled down to transcribing her shorthand to Polish, then from Polish to English. Startled by loud banging on her apartment door, she struck the wrong typewriter key. Open up! Recognizing the voice, Angela unbolted the door to a furious Turtle. All right, Angela, where is it? What? The newspaper you took from my desk. Angela carefully dug through the embroidery, personal items, and other paraphernalia in her tapestry bag and pulled out the newspaper folded to the Westing obituary. I'm sorry, Turtle. I would have asked for it, but you weren't around. You don't also happen to have my Mickey Mouse clock in there, too, do you? Turtle softened on seeing her sister's hurt expression. I'm only kidding. You left your engagement ring on the sink again. Better go get it before somebody steals that, too. Oh, I wouldn't worry about anyone stealing Angela's ring, Sidel Pulaski remarked. No mother would stoop that low. The thought of Grace being the burglar was so funny to Turtle, she plopped down on the sofa and rolled around in laughter. It felt good to laugh. The stock market had fallen 5 points today. Angela, please tell your sister to get her dirty shoes off my couch. Tell her to sit up and act like a lady. Turtle rose with a tongue click very much like her mother's, but she was not about to leave without striking back. Arms folded, she leaned against the wall and let them have it. Mom thinks Angela was the one who stole the shorthand notebook. That got them. Look at those open mouths. Because Mom asked to see it and Angela does everything she says. Anyone could have stolen my notebook. I didn't double lock my door that day. If Sidel couldn't trust her own partner, she was alone. All alone. Did Mom really say that? Angela asked. No, but I know how she thinks. I know what everybody thinks. Grown-ups are so obvious. Ridiculous, scoffed Sidel. For instance, I know that Angela doesn't want to marry that sappy intern. Ridiculous. You're just jealous of your sister. Maybe, Turtle had to admit, but I am what I am. I don't need a crutch to get attention. Oh, she had gone too far. Turtle didn't mean it that way, Sidel, Angela said quickly. She used the word crutch as a symbol. She meant, you know that people are so afraid of revealing their true selves that they have to hide behind some sort of prop. Oh, really? Sidel replied. Then Turtle's crutch is her big mouth. No, Angela thought, hurrying her sister out of the door and back to their apartment. Turtle's crutch is her braid. The newspaper man called again to say he had found some photographs taken at Westingtown parties 20 years ago. One of those names appears in a caption as Violet Westing's escort, George Theodorakis. Go on, the judge said. That's all. He promised to send her the clippings in the Westing file as soon as he had shoveled off. The judge now knew of 4 heirs with Westing connections. James Hu, the inventor, Theo's father, her partner, Sandy McSuthers, who had been fired from the Westing paper mill, and herself. But she had to learn more about each of the heirs if she hoped to protect the victim of Sam Westing's revenge. She would have to hire a detective, a very private detective, who had not been associated with her in her practice or in the courts. J.J. Ford flipped through the yellow pages to investigators, private. Good grief! Her finger stopped near the top of the list. Was it a coincidence or dumb luck? Or was she playing right into Sam Westing's hand? No choice but to chance it. The judge dialed the number and tapped her foot impatiently, waiting for an answer. Hello? If you're looking for a snowbound private investigator, you've got the right number. Yes, she had the right number. It may be a trick, but it was no coincidence. The voices were one and the same. Stopping there. So we actually get some more clues. We also realize that there is a burglar on the loose and a bomber, somebody that bombed the coffee shop. So I want us to try to think about who we think those people will be. There were also more clues that were given to us today that I think are important to mark on our character cards. One was about Sandy McSuthers, about how he was fired from the paper mill. I think that's an important point because that would also lead to motive in trying to kill him or harm him. Another was Theo's father. So even though George Theodorakis is not one of the heirs, we could put that under Theo, that his dad escorted Violet Westing to one of the parties, which means that there is some sort of connection between the Theodorakis family and Sam Westing. So let's get back now to our activity for today. So I would like you guys to look up the song America the Beautiful. This is going to be important because it's going to come into play later. If you have a copy of the first stanza from America the Beautiful, so you can actually look it up online and then copy it down in your notebook or Google Doc or a piece of paper, or if you have printer access, you can actually print out the song. I want you to copy down and re-examine the clues. So the clues that are on your character cards, but I'm going to actually give you the clues that were written on each of those partners' pieces of paper, because these clues connected may actually tell us the message we need to hear. Remember, the will read, it's not what you have, but what you don't have that counts. And then we have the two questions, and these are just a personal response, your opinion. We have no proof as of now, so just speculation. Who do you think the burglar is and why? And who do you think the bomber is and why? So start making some guesses. Again, finding out who the burglar is and the bomber is may give us some clues into who killed Sam Westing. Okay, so the last thing that I'm going to show you are the clues that the partner groups received. There were 6 clues that were shared in the book. So taking a look at these, you can pause your computer screen in order to write these down. For plain grain shed, sea mountain am-o, fruited purple waves for sea, his and on to thee for, skies am shining brother, and good grace from hood spacious. So they clearly are all jumbled up and don't make a lot of sense. But let me point you in just a slight direction. If we link these clues to the song America the Beautiful, it may start pointing us in the right direction of who done it. Okay, that is it for today. I cannot wait to continue the journey and continue to read chapters 13 and 14 tomorrow. I hope you have a wonderful rest of the day. Bye, dolphins.